That's a pretty nifty little device. Thank you again, Sharon. It's not as cinematically effective as striking a match, but it is pretty cool. So, we are here. We are in the penultimate relationship stories. The fourth girl that I fell in love with, Claire. And this was a unique situation across the board for me, right? I was living in a completely different city that I had never lived in before, only had ever visited prior to this. And I mean, if Jenna was my wild card, Claire truly was the rebel, and she just was simply not even playing the same game as the rest of them. You know what I mean? She sort of flew in the face of everything I thought I had preferred or wanted. She was way out there in terms of my comfort zone, what I knew in my heart that I was actually okay with. But I was in this point in my life where I was really starting to come into my own. I was starting to figure out who I was. I had spent a long time getting over Jenna, with healthy ways, like focusing on myself, and unhealthy ways as well. But there was a huge journey I had gone on. And when I ended up meeting Claire, I wouldn't say I was in the best place in my life, but I was still quite happy with everything that was going on, right? I had gone out and I had had experiences and learned things about myself and life and what I wanted. I was in a very unique situation. I was working with my older brother up there as a bartender at a bar that he owned. That was a position that I eventually moved into manager of, kind of irrelevant to what we're talking about, but it was in that atmosphere where I met Claire. And when I met her at the time, she was a dancer, and she was completely opposite of anything else I had ever experienced when it came to women, right? She was in one way this stereotypical idea that a lot of people just have of people like that, and in another way, she could make me laugh my ass off like you wouldn't believe. She had one of the best senses of humor I had ever come across to that point. We were pretty much on the same level when it came to what we found humorous, and we were able to make each other laugh in so much that I didn't even realize that was one of the core memories that I still had of her until I just started talking about it now. But we did. Claire and I laughed so much, and that truly is the best medicine for a lot of things, right? When I met her, it was very much her who played the pursuer. I wasn't especially interested in starting up a relationship at that moment, but she was very determined, and she pushed and pushed, not in a negative way at all, just in a very, flirtatious, inviting way. And we started a relationship that ended up becoming a really rock solid one, all in all. Unfortunately, I wasn't really implementing things that I had learned from my previous relationships when I really should have been. I think I was actively at this point, I say actively, maybe it was subconsciously, but I'll go with actively. I was actively working against myself, saying, well, I know what I want. I know what I need, or what I expect when it comes to a woman that I'm going to marry and want to spend the rest of my life with. And I wholeheartedly approached my relationship with Claire, ignoring all of that, thinking caution to the wind, it don't matter, we're just having fun, it's not going to go anywhere. But it did, right? Like, it did end up going somewhere. She became a very important person in my life. I loved her dearly, which just, makes the end of it all that much harder to think about as I do now. But those beginning moments when we first met, like I said, I was in this new world for myself, and I was excited. I was riding high on this new lifestyle for myself. Not even just new lifestyle, but a new life for myself. I was finally out on my own for the first time, 100% officially. I wasn't back home living with my parents. I spent quite a large time living with family when I first got up there, but eventually I got my own place and I was on my own. And that really taught me a lot of things that I probably already knew just from being rather intelligent when it comes to things like that, but also I'm quite stubborn. So experiencing that for the first time made me realize what it can be like when you actually take that time for yourself. And I was very happy and enjoying life at that time, which is one reason why I was A-okay with sort of ignoring what I guess I would call warning signs or things that I knew I probably in the long run wouldn't be okay accepting. But by and large, it was like every other relationship at the beginning, right? You get into that honeymoon phase and you're on cloud nine again. And it's nice that you can go through the ringer, so to speak, with previous relationships, and you can have your heart broken and you can feel like the absolute worst ever. But to get pulled back up out of that and realize that you can have those amazing and incredible feelings again is an amazing and incredible feeling of its own, right? And it's nice to take solace in the fact that you then know that you're not totally screwed. Because I think that's something that, well, I know I do, and I know there's quite a few people that probably do this to themselves, that as soon as they go through a breakup, they think, that's it, I'm done. I'm never going to be able to find anybody else. That was the best for me. I was lucky then, and I lost it, and now I'm just cursed to be alone. Woe is me. I think these are very normal thoughts and normal feelings to have when we experience stuff like that. And I definitely did with Jenna, right? Like that was a roller coaster of a relationship. When it comes to Claire, though, as great as it was too, she not only made me laugh and made me fall in love with her, and we had this incredible time together. Like I am saying, she was the rebel out of all of these women. She was the one that was going against the grain the most. And if I took anything really huge away from that relationship on the positive side of things, it was that I learned, even though at the time I didn't realize it, but I learned from Claire that you can absolutely go against everything you know and make it work. You don't have to fall into a category that society says we need to be in. And this is something that I've been saying ever since I started my van life channel here, right? That I don't like the fact that we get put into these boxes where society says you have to be this way. You got to do this. And you're probably going to be miserable, but you got to do this because everybody else is, and that's just the way it is. And Claire was the one who really showed me inadvertently that no, you don't. And again, I didn't realize that at the time when it was happening, right? I think possibly part of my attraction to her was that. I mean, she was this gorgeous girl, and seeing her carry herself this way and provide for her family this way and have such a big heart that she does, was super cool to see that she wasn't stressing herself out or living her life for somebody else. She was living life on her own terms, and for some reason she wanted this schmuck to be a part of it for a little while, which was really cool. And I had a really good time with her, and I'm very happy that I was able to take that sort of worldview away with me from that relationship, right? Now, and I think back on that relationship and the beginning there and how exciting it was. I don't know that I would change anything. Initially, I that's the way I always feel at the end of relationships. Like, well, if I had done this differently, if I had just not opened myself up like that, then I would have been okay. Nothing terrible would have happened. But I'm glad that I didn't. She was also a very polar opposite of any other girl I'd ever been with, even when it came to look. She was this gorgeous brunette that masked her hair with this bleach blonde look that worked for her. It was a very striking look, and it suited her so well. And looking back, again, metaphorically speaking, it really suits the whole ensemble that was Claire. She came into my life unfortunately, to quote Miley Cyrus, like a wrecking ball, but in a good way, you know? Like she demolished my expectations or assumptions of life. She was able to make me actually feel love for another human being again, really get down and care for her. And at the end of the day, she had a heart of gold. And she, as much as I say, she didn't have what I wanted for myself. She kind of did. It was everything else that held me back, but she did have a lot of traditional values, and she became close and had love and compassion for people in my family, which at the time, again, I didn't really consider to be super important. Looking back now, I did, and I've actually had conversations with her years after the fact, and she was a nice support to have. And we were able to talk about nostalgic things from our relationships, and just hearing her speak about my parents and stuff like that was really heartwarming. And it was nice to know that while we were never going to work, there was a moment in our relationship where we worked so well and things were great. And that's, I think, one of the best things you can take away from a relationship, right? Is just the fact that you did have a good time. Yes, it would be great if we could find one person and everybody values love and looks at it sacredly, the exact same way, and no matter what, through thick and thin, people just stand by each other's side. Unfortunately, that's not the way it is by and large. There are absolutely exceptions out there, and there's people that have fought through thick and thin, the worst, the best, and they are still together. But by and large, for most of us, that's not really the way this thing is playing out, you know? But it was nice to have those moments, and it's even nicer to be able to look back and remind myself that as angry as I get and as frustrated as I get when, you know, these romantic relationships ultimately devolve, that there were good times. And I think it's important to focus on that. That's really cliche. That sounds super cliche to say that, right? Say, well, at least I can look back on those good times, and I'll always have those. When you're frustrated and you're upset, you just want to say, nope, I don't care. There were no good times. It was all shit. That was horrible. That person's terrible. And I just need to move on from it and focus on other bloody things. But it is nice, once all of that calms down, to look back and be able to garner stuff from those relationships. And it's nice for me as I get older and I mature through this and realize what is important to me. And I know this now. But it is nice to look back and know that, as frustrated as I might have been with myself at the time of breaking up with a person, it wasn't time wasted. They were all very good experiences, and I learned a lot from Claire. Again, it was this super high in my life where, a super high and also super surreal, because totally out of my wheelhouse, living life at the bar, you know, having late nights till 3, 4 in the morning. I was like this relationship fueled on a completely polar opposite way of living, right? Before that, I had never done that. I've spoken about it before. I was never the party guy. I was never the bar guy. And now here I am basically running one and I'm surrounded by all of these incredible people. Everybody's got high spirits. Everybody's got stories to tell. And you know what? Honestly, there are still days today where I miss that schedule, you know, where you sleep till noon. And then you go into work at 2 or 3 and you're there till 3 or 4 in the morning. It was a really, really interesting and fun time in my life that I wouldn't trade for the world. And I'm really happy that Claire was along for the ride with me. What would probably have been the better choice for all of this. Now, I knew this even when it was happening, but I know it even more so now. The better choice would have been to just continue to ride that high. And as soon as it started to sort of peter out, or we sort of just start to feel ourselves snap back to reality, as Eminem once said, that probably would have been the best time to end it, because not only was I not remembering what I had already learned from my previous relationships and implementing it in order to protect myself and make smart, rational decisions, Claire was also making sacrifices for me and for us that I know now 100% she didn't want to make. But God love her, she did them, and we tried to make it work. And there were still plenty of good times to come, but I mean, it was kind of, the writing was on the wall right off the hop there, that once we came down from that honeymoon phase and this incredible boost for each other, and we started to actually think about, well, could we have a life together? Could we make this work? It almost immediately got super hard, and boneheaded us, we decided to push through that, and wow, things got pretty interesting. But that is a story for another time. That is the beginning of Claire and the beginning of the second to last relationship we will be talking about here on the channel. So thank you very much for watching. Until the next one, just go out there, be happy, be creative, be yourselves, and most importantly, just be positive.